Episode 70 of The Blathering here on the Napzok Network podcast feed or on the Ken Napzok YouTube channel. And I'm happy you're all here. Last week's episode, which was, I understand, a little bit more serious, but you're used to that now. Some days it's pointless discussions about Del Taco, and other days it's serious discussions about the danger of conspiracy theories and why you shouldn't believe anything at the alien UFO UAP hearings. But I missed something big. I didn't know it. For those on the podcast feed, for those who have been listening since the early days, 2013 to be exact, I didn't realize it, but and sometimes I don't believe these numbers, especially I've switched podcast host providers a couple times here on Anchor or Spotify for podcasters, as it's called now, and Happy here, I will say. Podomatic before that. This was apparently, according to all the numbers on this podcast feed, which has been the same RSS feed since 2013, last week's episode was the 500th broadcast. And that's pretty cool. I'm pretty happy with that. Even if you do, weekly, once a week, every week of the year, that's 52 episodes. 500 is a crazy number. And 70th of this episode of this series, The Blathering, we did about 86 plus, including special episodes of Saturday Night Napzok. I miss that more than ever now. Napzok Files got into the hundreds. And Life Ranked and all those things that came before. It's been quite a journey. I like that it's all the same feed. I like that. If I had broken off the feeds over the years, I don't even know if I'd been successful. I don't know what would happen. I'm happy that I have this permanent record of my life, my journey over the last 10 years or so. And I'm happy where it is right now. And I think before we get into some of the stuff I want to talk about tonight, I actually want to stop because I love joking in the negative sometimes. I always try to push to be more positive in my humor and all those good things. But, I go joke in the negative, meaning I focus at it. I poke at it. I try to own the negative. And over the course, and this was something that I worked through a lot on Saturday Night Napzok, as my audience numbers began to dwindle, for a lot of reasons, by the way, not any change in my views of the world or change in the styles of the show. That probably affected a lot of the numbers, but also just podcast habits changed with COVID and the lockdown and people working at home now. I get it. Or you just get tired. 10 years is a long time to follow me, right? 10 years, man, is if you were a senior in high school and you're like 18, you're in your late 20s now, you're not listening to me. You wanted my dumb movie takes, and now I'm doing other things. Nah, you don't follow me. So I have a tendency to look at the negative space, the numbers that I used to have, the weekly download numbers that I used to have, which were never huge for this channel, but they were 5 times more than what they are now. And in doing so, I don't pay attention, and I don't give enough respect to those of you who are listening every week, those of you who are on the journey, those of you that forgot to unsubscribe to the podcast. No, those of you who are here for it. And I really appreciate it. I really, really, really do. There was something that went around last week where a performer at the Fringe Festival, right? No, not Fringe. No, maybe it was Edinburgh Fringe Festival. It was over in Edinburgh, a big comedy festival over there. I haven't been. And she did a one-woman show. It was like at 1 a.m. or something like that. She had one person in the audience, which, by the way, I haven't been part of that festival, but I know a lot of people have been part of the Fringe festivals around the world. And they said that's pretty common, right? So it's certainly not a reflection on you as a performer, your drawing power, anything like that. It's just, it's kind of a festival that goes at all times at night, different locations. And so I had some other friends who, this is not anything new. This is conversations that I've had over the last year or two, or last 5-10 years, actually, quite frankly, of, oh yeah, we went to Edinburgh and we performed in front of 3 people. And then I've talked to people, a lot of the people associated with the Star Wars in 30 Minutes cast, sell out shows and those kind of things, right? And so it can make or break you. That's why you go. And there was a performer that posted a very vulnerable picture, tears in her eyes, saying just performed in front of one person at the Fringe Festival, and I'm trying to be, trying to move on and be okay with it, or whatever she said exactly. And that spawned a great reaction. A lot of people coming to virtually hug her, just say, hey, it's all right. And a lot of famous folks. I think Michael McKean, I saw his, talking about his performing days with the Credibility Gap. We performed in front of 3 people. A lot of other, very famous, successful people saying, we did this show, and only 4 people came. 1 person came. One comic saying, I did a show, and the only people listening were the people that were working there. There was no one showed up to the show. And that's important to remember, because we've all been there as creatives. You put something out there, and you just hope that people show up. And it's not necessarily you, right? I'll leave 5% window for maybe it is. Maybe you're an asshole. But that's just kind of the growth. I've been obsessed with that moment in David Bowie's career. I've mentioned it a lot lately. It's featured in the doc 1971 of him playing the festival, kind of as a Glastonbury in 71, this famous, not only famous festival, but the supposedly famous moment in his career where David Bowie became David Bowie. And the reality is, the truth of it is, he played in front of a tired, hungover, sparse crowd at 5 a.m. The songs weren't fully formed. He'd been around for a couple of years, but the David Bowie that we would soon know and the world would understand, come to understand as a genius in the industry, he wasn't that person yet. And so it's fascinating, and it's good to be reminded of that. And so a lot of people came to this performer's side to prop her up and say, it's okay. They're there, one person. But it was an interesting moment. And I got to admit, I always kind of preach and make sure you dig and find the actual truth. I didn't go beyond just what I saw, but someone had tweeted out, I was that one person. It was me. And she gave me her all. And she did not do anything but the best for that performance for me. And that reminded me, again, whether true or not, you could always, I'm sure there's, one of my late uncle said he was in the stadium at Dodger Stadium when Willie Stargell hit a home run. It's a famous home run, hit it over left field and out into the parking lot. And I remember, oh, that's awesome. And I told another friend of mine that, and he goes, yeah, everybody's uncle was at that game. Sure. So I don't know. So I don't know if that tweet was actually the person from the audience, but it reminded me of the other side of it, of be there and be present for those that show up with you, for you. I wish I could say that if this was, I do live, be there and be present for those who show up for you. How about that? That sounds cleaner. Put that on a t-shirt or bumper sticker, but you know what I mean. And I think that's a powerful lesson. I won't say which show it was, but Mark Ellis and I, when we go around and do our comedy thing, a lot of times wonderful sold-out shows, packed houses. We squeeze, 80 people into a rock venue that sits 60, or other times we've had 100 plus, 150 plus. Arizona, when we did that in 2019 with Josh McCouga, big show, a lot of fun. We had one show in Seattle. It wasn't good. And we both had that, okay, what do we do here? And here's what you do. We had about 14 paid, and we performed our heart out for those 14 people. And it was a great time, and they were a great audience. Hunter Hill ended up being on the show. Very great, talented, insightful, poignant comic who opens up for Eliza on the road, and Taylor Tomlinson on the road a lot recently. Check him out if you haven't seen him. He's doing beautiful, important work, I think, in stand-up, and he's just damn funny. And he just happened to be in the area on the same flight with us, and we put him on the show. So those 14 or so people, plus a couple staff members, kind of great show. And we didn't leave going, man, 100 seats and 86 were empty. We did our best to give those 14 people a show, and we gave them a good one. It's one of the things I'm proud about. And so I wanted to start the show because I was feeling down lately, again, of the numbers, again, of the success. A lot of this relates to the other show I do with Joseph and Jennifer, Force Center. For those of you that also listen to that show, we've made some temporary changes, which we're not talking or promoting. Struck work, being real strict with that. Spirit of the law, even though we could probably get away with it. Jen's in SAG. We want to protect that, and we just want to support. We want to do what we feel is right. And we understand not everyone's going to stick around. And we don't need everyone to stick around. But man, it's the reality of that decision is hitting us in the face. It's been tough. It's been tough. And it's not necessarily you. People aren't even necessarily mad. A lot of people, there's a couple people that have bowed out of Patreon and been like, hey, you get what you're doing. I don't know why you're doing it, though. I think everyone else is doing Star Wars. Why shouldn't you guys? But all right, I think you're hurting things, but cool. They pack up their bags and leave, which is their choice, and we support it. We're not fighting it, but it hurts. It stings. And I think even last week, I went pretty hard on my thoughts on the alien stuff. By the way, I go hard again on Force Center this coming week. And that's not the popular choice, and I don't think it's not necessarily about being the fish swimming upstream. Being a contrarian is not necessarily always the best option, but I'm just speaking what I believe in my heart is important about the issue, about conspiracy theory thinking and where it leads. And I could go the other way, and I'm already seeing some folks go the other way, and it's working out nicely for them. And I'm down about that. And I think we all can get in that spot where you're down about what you don't have. You're down about what you're not getting. And not in a pout, I deserve, but just you're giving your honest best and you're trying and you're doing the work on yourself and you're doing the work at your job. You're doing the work in relationships. And it's just not going your way. Maybe it doesn't always go your way. Like maybe that's something you live with. And it's so easy to focus on that negative space. So easy. So I average now about 250 to 400 listens per episode on the podcast side, a little bit more on the YouTube side. But I mean, in terms of I add a little bit to the number. And that was not the case. Used to be in the thousands, which is a modest number compared to other folks and what they get, in which that's not a comment on anything. That's just kind of the podcast business. And here's where I'm at now, I was really down. Almost the point where I didn't want to do a show today. Had a little bit of the what's the point vibe. I thought about that Edinburgh thing. And this isn't about me doing something good. I'm here for you. I'm showing up for you. No, you all show up for me. You're all following me on the journey. And man, that's humbling. And man, that's awesome. And you know what? I deserve that. I deserve your support because I've gone on a long journey to get where I'm at. I'm happy where I am, happy who I am. So I deserve your support, and I'm going to take it, accept it. And you deserve the best of me, and I hope you take it and accept it. So this week, I'm not going to go deep into aliens, not even going to touch them. That's about as far as I'll mention aliens, other than I still don't believe. And you can as well. I don't care. Just watch your conspiracy thinking. But we're going to talk about things, talk about what I want to talk about today. But here's one of the things. This sounds like a hacky comedy, but I don't have this car insurance anymore. I canceled this car insurance policy. I don't have the car that's covered by this. And by the way, if you're listening to the audio, I'm holding up an envelope and a document. A little ASMR almost for you, huh? I've canceled this. And they're still sending me, you owe us money, not for the policy that passed, but for the policy that's about to renew in August. Is this what bureaucracy is? Is this what all the great office place sitcoms are about? Because this is driving me crazy. I've canceled it. I've spoken with someone via electronic mail. I've gone into the website. I've told everyone around me who works for this company, thanks but no thanks. I'm good. The car covered by this is no longer alive. And I have another situation right now. And I haven't even told them that I've switched insurance companies. I haven't even told them that I now own another car. I've just simply said, you're not needed in my life anymore. I'm not showing up for you, and I don't want you to show up for me. But here we go. Wasted paper sent to me. If I was a hackier comic, we could do some great bureaucracy comedy. Who doesn't love bureaucracy comedy? I've also been down lately because I've been watching the Ken Burns documentary from 2017 with Lynn Novak as well, the Vietnam War. And if you listen to me at a lot of different podcast spots, a lot of times what I'm doing in like my personal time, what I'm watching becomes a little bit of my identity for a couple weeks because I'm learning from it, or I'm inspired from it, or moved or shook by it. Young Indiana Jones Chronicles was that for a while because I was just studying it, watching it, and blown away by the stuff George Lucas and his writing team were putting into the show, how direct the politics were, and I was fascinated with it. I've been watching this documentary because I'm a Ken Burns fan, but I haven't watched all of them. He has a lot of docs out there. You think Civil War, baseball, then you're like, I don't know, what else did he do? The war, which is about World War II, the Vietnam War, Thomas Jefferson, I'm going to catch up with that one. That's a bit an older one. Jazz, I'm going to watch that. Prohibition, which I did start watching, and then I just didn't finish it and moved, and life changed. One on the Roosevelts. The list goes on and on and on. And they are documentaries, and they're considered documentaries, but Ken Burns is not necessarily a documentary filmmaker. He's a filmmaker. He's a storyteller. And he, in a lot of interviews that I have been watching as well, he goes into, pretty direct explanations, I would say, of what he means by that. He gets the facts right as best they can. There's some mistakes at times. They overlook some things, and he goes back and says, "Yeah, anything that you notice isn't in a documentary, and you ask why isn't that? Me and my staff and team have already spent countless hours up all night crying in our beer because we know we can't put that in, or we didn't get to it, or even a 10-hour doc doesn't get a chance. You don't get a chance to put everything in." And then there's just been some mistakes. There's something he admitted to in an interview I saw for the 1997 Thomas Jefferson doc, on which the technology did not exist to confirm all the horrendous stuff with Sally Hemings and the family claiming that they are descendants of Jefferson. That was kind of tossed aside in the doc because in 1997 or before that, when the doc was made in the early to mid 90s, they didn't really have that stuff, right? Like the OJ trial, Barry Scheck on the defense team is one of the first to come along and kind of work in kind of the blood sciences, patent pending on that term. That's pretty recent, right? In which we can start using DNA and blood and samples to really, truly determine things. It's crazy where we are now. And I'm sure AI is keeping track of it as it plots to take us over. Anyways, all this to say, this isn't a Ken Burns podcast here. I finally was like, I need to watch the Vietnam War because he said something in an interview I was watching on YouTube. Man, what a boring life I lead, right? Just watching YouTube interviews while I have breakfast. And he said they decided that they needed to do the Vietnam doc while making the World War II doc. And that he felt this was, they needed to do it. And then in the process of making the Vietnam doc, this is a war that he grew up in and with. He didn't go to the war because he had a high draft number, so that's the only reason I didn't go in. But he was a child of the 50s and 60s. This is what formed him. This is what he lived through. It was real present history for him and those around him making the doc. But he, speaking for himself, Ken Burns said that upon getting into this doc, upon making this doc, which took them 10 years to make, this series, very early on, he realized he did not know anything about this war and about the history around it, about the reasons around it. You thought you did. You understood a lot of the names. You understood a lot of the events, right? Ho Chi Minh Trail, Tet Offensive, General Westmoreland, Nixon, Kennedy, LBJ. Yeah, I got it. I know it, man. But he didn't know anything about it. And I was like, I'm fascinated by that because I too, I think I understand a lot about Vietnam, right? Oh, okay. I've even read comic books about it in the 80s. Larry Hama, the guy behind all the G.I. Joe stuff, Vietnam vet, I believe. Yeah. He had a separate Marvel comic series just called Nam. And I had it as a kid. And it's not a kid's comic. Man, you talk about comics should be considered as the art that they are. Man, I don't know why. I have the issues. I should pull them out, man. We'll take another look at them. So I thought I understood it. My uncle was served in Vietnam in the Army. My dad and his brother, my late Uncle Nick, were in the Navy during that time. They decided to go to the Navy, and So their experience with Vietnam was a little different, but they were over there, So I grew up with that kind of stuff. And you think, just like you think, your World War II stories because my grandfather would tell them, and people in my neighborhood. I lived in a townhome complex with a World War II vet, and my mom arranged for me to interview him for a school project. It was fascinating stuff. So you think but when it's all laid down on the tracks, you don't. And I've been over the last week slowly watching. It's a 10-part doc series, and I think I'm up to episode 7. And it's been hard to take. It's been hard to watch, and that's put a mood over a lot of things too. A lot of these episodes end, and I don't want to go into the details. It's weird to say spoiler for a Vietnam doc, but I just think it's so powerful. What's going on in these docs that it's a gut punch. And I think it's affected my mood, and it's caused me to look down, caused me to be a little depressed about the podcast. And what do I talk about? And maybe I should just go on the Blathering and just talk about some bullshit, talk about my favorite Del Taco tacos again, and talk about 7-Eleven and all the things that people used to enjoy about me. But I'm not there anymore. I want to talk about what's on my heart and my mind, and going back and revisiting the history, revisiting the mistakes, and putting it together in a story, in an emotional story, which is what Ken Burns and his team does so well, where you feel it even more if it's just the dry facts. I do some work on the side for a YouTube company right now, and their specialty is Easter egg videos, and they don't have any creativity beyond that. So I'm putting together some projects with them. I'm like very on the side helping out with some stuff. And a lot of the notes come back. They just want Easter eggs. Or they just want why is this retrospective on the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles? Why is it not written in chronological order? And it's like, well, I'm not writing a essay for a video essay for YouTube. I'm writing a song. This is water. This is a river flowing. This ebbs and flows. And I'm telling a story. I'm trying to connect all this emotion from this series and the emotion that's created by the decisions of George Lucas and his team. I'm trying to play in that. I'm not just trying to paint by number through a retrospective. And that's what I love so much about the Ken Burns docs. They hit me hard, and I've been down and out. But I've got to finish the series. We got to face this history. You got to face who we are. That's kind of where I'm at right now. So how do we make that, how do we turn this into a fun, entertaining podcast? How about this? How about I take a quick break, and when we come back, I'm going to get a little angry at Ron DeSantis. Oh, that sounds like fun. Okay. Yeah. Here we go. One of my things in life, I'm going to take a sip of this pineapple coconut hydration drink I got. One of my pet peeves, why I hate the Easter eggers in the YouTube space, at least the ones that stay there. It's still a valuable resource, but, have something to say, you fuckheads. Something happened. There's so many things I could pick of Ron DeSantis, one of the worst political figures, I think, in history. Also one of the, tragically comical. He's pathetic in so many ways. And recently I was asked about why I don't like him. And it's just, again, who he is and what he stands for. But here's the thing. Here's a hyper-specific thing he did that really, I was laughing, but it upsets me because it ties into, and I'm going to try to dance around talking about the specific movies that I spent a lot of time talking about. But it's why over the last year or so, I have been so up in arms, like I said earlier, pet peeve-wise, of media literacy. That phrase that pops up a lot. And it's one of those phrases that has already become a bad word. People can misuse it. It's something that people fight over. Much like the word woke. I'm not comparing the two. But I am kind of connecting them, actually, when you hear me out here. But, woke is... But when someone like Ron DeSantis is using woke, and we got to be anti-woke, you're in a different arena, right? And the original intention of the word is being so watered down and misused and weaponized that you need to go back to the basics sometimes. So media literacy on social media, particularly X.com, has been so overused that the impact of the true meaning of it is probably gone already in a short amount of time. But it's what has made me so angry at the space that I still kind of work in, the movie, TV, news space, the digital media space, the pop culture space, why I've changed so much of my stuff here, why Force Center continues to get deeper and deeper and deeper and more specific when we are talking about Star Wars, about what it means and how you can carry that on into your own life. And this is why it's important. And this is why I do consider media literacy to be so important, and a lack of media literacy to be dangerous. Troublesome at best, dangerous at worst. This went around social this past weekend. Ron DeSantis was in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, campaigning, stumping. He played baseball in college. He's a baseball fan. Got it. So am I. I also don't watch baseball as much anymore because there's so many MAGA types in the game. So it's a hard time for me to associate with it. And he said this. I was looking for video. I couldn't find it. So you're going to get me. I'm not going to do an impersonation of him. I'm not a Saturday Night Live cast member. That dream died a long time ago, right? DeSantis says he's talking about his son. God bless his son, he had no choice in this. He's two dumb parents. And what are you going to do? The first time we brought him to Iowa, I showed him, so he can use pronouns. Okay. I showed him the movie Field of Dreams because that was a big deal for me as a kid playing baseball and everything. Okay. Love it. Got it. You're a baseball guy, DeSantis. And Field of Dreams is associated with baseball because baseball's in it in the movie. Put a pin in this. It's not a baseball movie, but I understand that if you're just passing through, it's a baseball movie, and you like it. Got it. So he says, Ron goes on to say this. So yesterday we were at the Clayton County Fair, and before we got back on the bus, we just went over in the field right next to all the corn, and my son brought his baseball stuff, and he's throwing balls to me, and he said, Daddy, is this heaven? And I said, I told him it was Iowa, but hey, it's close, right? And yeah, everyone cheers because Iowa. What a dummy. And this, I'm not having this isn't a new thought for me because a lot of people saw that or heard that clip from him and had the same exact thought. This is a governor that is changing drastically to a dangerous level the curriculum in his own state. This is a governor that has been one of the leaders in supporting the banning of certain books, right? And no matter how he tries to spin it, this is what's going on, and this is a political party that's okay with that, right? He ain't the only one, right? This is the thing. And here he is saying, I love baseball. Baseball's the best. And Field of Dreams just means everything to me. And here I am playing catch with my son, right? And so it gets, and me, Ken, I cry at that moment of Field of Dreams. It's a great moment. It's a great, father, sons, family. It's a big theme in the movie, without a doubt. Without a doubt. But so is, and this is, I know the movie's based on a book. I know that. But in the movie, it has the subplot of the banning of books. The banning of books.
Like this has no place in our schools.
This is the scene in the movie. One of the scenes.
Fascist. I'd like to ease her pain.
Mrs. Kesenick, that book you're waving about is hardly smut. It is considered by many critics to be the classic novel about the 1960s.
It's pornography!
No. The Supreme Court says it's not. And its author, Mr. Mann,
is sick.
Terrence Mann is a Pulitzer Prize winner. And he is widely regarded as the finest satirist of his time.
Yeah, well, I think he's a pervert. He's probably a communist, too.
What planet are these people from?
Mr. Harris,
Maybe
the
Madigan.
so-called novels of Terrence Mann endorse promiscuity, godlessness, the mongrelization of the races, and disrespect to high-ranking officers of the United States Army.
All of that, mind you, is what people pour into the bucket of traditional values. And if you're not any of that, then you're against America. In fact, this is the next beat.
And that is why right-thinking school boards all across the country have been banning this man's S-H-I-T since 1969. Excuse me, madam.
It's probably a communist, right? And this is my problem with the 1950s and the post-World War II America that forms, this identity that forms. And if you're not any of those things, you are not traditional. You're not against America. And this is why we have to suppress anything that would foster these kind of dangerous thoughts in folks, right? Amy Madigan's character, goes on to explain the emotions.
Excuse me.
Right? These are the emotions.
Man was a warm and gentle voice of reason during a time of great madness. He coined the phrase, make love, not war. While other people were chanting, burn, baby, burn, he was talking about love and peace and understanding.
The scene cuts off there. And that's what I'm talking about, like even with Ken Burns, all the stuff I'm trying to do here, and why you should hold your favorite YouTube movie talkers to a higher standard and some accountability about, are they discussing the art? Are they trying to understand it? This is just one scene in the movie. This plays throughout it. It's a B plot, a subplot versus some of the major stuff, but it all ties into it. James Earl Jones playing Terrence Mann, and this factors into this. He was a former civil rights activist. They shot Martin. They shot Bobby. He didn't want any of it anymore, and he goes and starts programming computer programs for children, right? Teaching the next generation. And the powers that be, they need to control this, right? You guys know where I'm going. I'm not saying anything new. So for Ron fucking DeSantis to sit here and tell potential constituents in Iowa, I love Field of Dreams. It's very important to me because I love baseball. And I played baseball with my son here in Iowa. It's comical. Number one, do you have to doubt if he even watched the movie? But two, I actually believe he did, because this is a problem that drives me crazy and keeps me up at night, and why I'm so cantankerous on these goddamn shows and these goddamn movie chat box shows and these movie reactors and all these things. You should do what you want. You should make the money you want, but have a goddamn point about what you're trying to talk about. Have a point, have a purpose to the art, because you're talking about art. And when you fail to understand art, you have this kind of situation where someone like Ron DeSantis and his voters and his followers and his fans and perhaps his family can sit and watch a movie, A Field of Dreams, and only come out of it thinking, what a great baseball story. Nothing is about what you think it's about. It's never just on the surface. It's part of it. Field of Dreams has a lot of great baseball in it, but that's not a baseball movie. I have one friend I haven't talked to in a while. He played Major League Baseball. He'll go on Twitter because he loves to argue, or X.bot, whatever. He'll go on. He loves, but once a year I'll see him post on social media. Field of Dreams is a horrible baseball movie. Anyone who considers it a good baseball movie should be shot. He'll say it's one of those dumb, super manly kind of things. And I never want to engage him in the argument because it isn't at the time. But it ain't a fucking baseball movie, man. Are you that adult? Are you that of a dullard that you look at this and only see it as a baseball movie with some fatherhood themes? It's such a deeper movie on so many levels. For people like Ron DeSantis to sit there, watch that movie, consider it one of their favorites, and have it inspire them in terms of baseball and fatherhood, and they miss an entire subplot with Christian nationalists, traditional value fascists trying to burn books because they dare suggest other lines of thinking or deeper thought or connect to emotions that they don't understand. For you to watch that movie and to come out of it not understanding any of it, or in fact ignoring that, is not just comical, it's dangerous. It's a dangerous thing, and it fuels so much discussions in the world. I'm trying really hard to not directly promote these movies because we're trying to be really strong about it on Force Center. And there's a lot of other people that aren't in that position. They don't have the room to shift gears with their shows, and I get it. A lot of them are my friends. I'm trying to be respectful. There's also a lot of people who are showing up, taking some picket line photos, and then they're still talking about this stuff and promoting it and promoting struck work. But I'm not here to wag too many fingers. I'm just kind of upset at the hypocrisy. So I'm trying to stay true to it and try not to be a hypocrite here. But I did see the Barbie movie this weekend. It is not just everything it's cracked up to be. It is more than that. It is more than that. It is a piece of important art. Haven't seen Oppenheimer yet. Barbenheimer. Yay, what a great dual marketing thing. I do want to see it. I do want to see that film. When I have 19 hours to give, I'll go see it. So at the risk of being a hypocrite and promoting this movie that was made by Struck Company, I'm willing to risk the hypocrisy because it was such an important story to take in. It moved me. It's about so many things. A lot of it about life and living and going with the change, and that's never easy, and that's hard, and it's a risk. And when things aren't perfect, you have the chance for pain, but pain is part of the experience. There's a moment early in the film, it's set in the real world portion of the story, that involves Barbie on a bench. It's not too long into the movie. It's pretty early on. And I clued into what was happening. She's looking around and seeing this. We already have spent time in her world, and instead of a comical, they do some comedy fish out of the water, a doll come to life in the real world. There's some of those beats early on, but the movie doesn't stay there, doesn't live with it, because that's not what it's about. And you see her experiencing all of the just experiences everyone else is having, and suddenly realizing in a split second that that's not what she's lived thus far. It moved me to an unexpected level. I started crying, and I never stopped all through that movie. It's such a beautiful piece of art, and yet here we are. And I always say, you don't have to love everything, right? If the movie wasn't for you, it wasn't for you. But I would say this, at the risk of sounding like some rage clickbait and podcast host with a beard. Don't trust anyone who says that. Push them on why. Push them. Go deeper. Comedy didn't work for me, and it's just not for me. Fair. I that's okay. But push them deeper, because there's a reason why. And there's so many bits of conversation out there about this movie being anti-men. And it's a feminist movie. Absolutely is. But there's a lot of conversations about this movie is anti-men, that this movie portrays all men, every man in that film is bad. And it's another, woke attack on toxic masculinity, which translates in those people's minds to a attack on just masculinity in general. And it's so just goddamn wrong, right? And it's so dangerous, because then this goes out. So you have like an absolute dimwit fuck like Bill Maher saying this on his show. You have people tweeting this stuff out. And it's all the usual characters, right? Again, press them as to why. Ben Shapiro's a grifter. Of course, he's going to do an 2-hour video on why the movie sucks and it's horrible and it's a woke liberal agenda and blah, blah, blah. And there's a trans Barbie out there. Of course, he's going to do that. So he gets his money. If you were to actually push him as to why, he might not even fully understand why he has such a internalized hate for himself, and why this movie represents so much of what he can't be. The Barbie movie, while doing a spectacular job of going into the experiences of women. There's an America Ferrera speech in there that I was surprised we weren't in the theater applauding. I was ready to, but no one in Burbank wanted to. But on the specific issue of this movie being anti-men, this movie is pro-men. Pro is those who identify as male. Those who are locked into prison. There's no need and no correct way in which you can contrast and compare the experiences of everyone here. So I'm speaking in some kind of generalities. I'm not saying anything of my experiences on the level of just a woman trying to walk down the street without being catcalled or harassed. But the danger of toxic masculinity, why it is something that should be spoken about often, and why people should understand it is to see what it truly does. It destroys the lives of so many people around us. There's a big war. There's kind of a war scene in the Barbie movie that's very funny, It's kind of funny and played out in a funny way, but it's the theme behind it is they're in this war because these men can't stop being this version of themselves they think they have to be to stop fighting. And I'm watching this movie the same week I'm getting deep into the Vietnam War doc. And it's the same thing. Oh, there's a lot of geopolitical issues and the French colonizing Vietnam and French Indochina, that whole thing. There's a lot of issues. Vietnam is not a black and white, cut and dry issue. But there are key moments in the Vietnam War in terms of America's involvement in which the powers that be knew they should get out of it, knew it was a trap, knew it was a loss. They couldn't. They couldn't face it. They couldn't fight for peace. They couldn't comprehend that, and they couldn't do an about-face. They weren't big enough to do that. And that is, to me, a giant example of toxic masculinity that destroyed thousands upon thousands of lives. There's a point in 1965 where the Secretary of Defense, Robert McNamara, is just like, we can't win this. 1965. The war would go on for 10 more years. And there's a Vietnam vet around this point in the doc who says, that's when I'm looking back, angers me so much. I didn't get there as a soldier till 1968. You're telling me 3 years before that, the powers that be knew they could not win, but they continued to go forward because they knew not another path. That theme is present in the Barbie movie, though not stated explicitly, that they're going over to talking about war. But that's the prison that men trap themselves in, that every day what you are, your strength, your power, your toys, your tools, your guns, your trucks, how many women want you, how many women you can conquest, how many women you can take because they're yours, power, jobs. It's a prison we put ourselves in. Those things broken apart and put on their own are not necessarily bad things. A good paying job, leading people beneath you, triple figures, six-digit salary, fancy car. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing by himself, no. But when it is what defines you, Ken wakes up every day, and his day, how his day goes, is based on how much Barbie pays attention to him. That doesn't hurt Barbie in this situation. Women do get hurt by this, but it hurts him in this situation. What a horrible existence. And that's the journey he goes through. And to the question of, is there not one good man in the story? Number one, Michael Cera's Alan, I think, is a good character. Yeah, other than some of the comedy that's played with the business side of it, but Will Ferrell has this character and everything, they are what they are, parodies of business and power and the workplace, politics and everything, all that, and corporate capitalism, all that kind of stuff. But even those characters, I would say, the movie's portraying them and all the men as good. They're just trapped by the society that they are also benefiting from. Patriarchy obviously benefits them, but it's undercutting them and destroying them and absolutely cuts into their existence. So to me, the movie is saying that, yeah, all these men in this particular film are actually good. They're just in a system that's destroying them just as much as the people around them. And wouldn't you want to be free from that? Because you don't have to be that. It doesn't have to be about that. It does not have to be about the conquest you have, the jobs you get. There's a great running bit about Beach Ken, not lifeguard Ken, Beach Ken. He is Beach. He's good at beach. That's what he is. He is Beach. Can't you imagine a life where you don't have to be Beach? The tagline of that whole kind of plot is Ken is me and I am Ken. And by the way, it's great to have my name popular again. Me and my buddy Ken Plumer, we're like the only Kens left in our world. And I think now there might be more Kens out there. Anyways, that's what the movie's saying, among many other things. So to have some dim-witted souls take to the airwaves and call this movie anti-men, call this movie woke trash, call this movie saying this movie portrays all men as bad, that willful, intentional misreading of this art is destructive for the people that believe it. So Ron DeSantis watches Field of Dreams over and over and over again because he likes baseball, and it's got baseball, Ray, all in the movie, and it does. You're missing the story because he has a lack of media literacy. He then is part of the party and part of the people that are bringing pain to so many, destroying lives by banning books, banning art, and banning anything that does not prop up traditional American values. It's destructive. It's a misreading of media to a dangerous, destructive level. So when I go off and on about it, I hate to be the Debbie Downer in the corner of the room. I was Debbie Downer last week because y'all want to have fun with aliens. And I'm like, it's a bigger problem. And be aware of the bigger problem. I think people don't want to discuss movies with me anymore offline, in face-to-face, in real-life situations, because this doesn't change for me. If you say you don't like season 8 of Game of Thrones, I'm going to try to do my best to shrug and say, oh, well, I do. But everyone seems to want to turn life into an episode of movie fights. And they want to debate it. Oh, well, the season 8 of Game of Thrones did this. You're free to not like it. But you're not free to misinterpret it in front of me. And I've been nearly finger in the face of a lot of people. I'm not fun at these kind of parties. I try to avoid these conversations because it's dangerous. It's not just about Game of Thrones. It's about how you see the goddamn world. And a lot of my friends who have already tweeted things out about the Barbie movie and misread what it is saying about men and masculinity, because no one's saying you can't be strong and hack lumber in the wilderness and lift weights and get a truck. We need that too. We need people to chop wood, you dummies. No one's saying that's got to stop. No one's saying that's what makes a man. That's the problem. You know what I mean? That's not what makes a man. Free yourself of that. Be you. Not some idea of what you're supposed to be. But this misreading destroys people. And a lot of the friends, what I was saying is a lot of the friends I have who are saying things about this movie are still the ones saying shitty, dumb things about Last Jedi. Shitty, dumb things about Game. Even moments that they love them misread. I've gone over and over and over and over on the Jon Snow moment in season 6 of Game of Thrones. Battle of the Bastards, the preamble to that great, amazing sequence in battle in the show. But it's the moment where Jon Snow and his army has a plan to draw out Ramsay Bolton. Time Ramsay Snow. But Ramsay produces Jon's youngest half-brother, Rickon. And in that moment, as Rickon is brutally killed in front of him with an arrow in a harrowing sequence, Jon Snow gives into every worst instinct impulse he has. He's toxic to himself in that moment. He does not keep to the plan that would keep others safe, that would win the battle, win the war. He gives into his passion, his rage, from an understandable point, which is part of the challenge of life. It's his brother. His brother's murdered in front of him by a complete madman he's trying to defeat. His sister and the other folks around him, particularly the women around him, have tried to counsel him against even getting to this situation, about waiting for what's right. He's not trusted them. He's been pig-headed and stubborn. And Jon Snow, who's on a valuable lesson to learn what actually being a hero is, fails in this moment. He charges out to try to save his brother. He fails. Now finds himself alone facing a stampeding army, and it's one of the greatest shots in the show. It's one of the greatest moments in the show, without a doubt. Jon Snow, with a sigh, pulls his sword out, draws his blade, and prepares to die at the hands of the charging Bolton army. He's saved by his soldiers. Eventually, when the battle was truly about to be lost, he's saved by his sister and the army she brings. The battle ends, and the crowning moment of victory that he's about to take and you think is his, he realizes the lesson that's not his, and he gives the moment to his sister. That moment is one of Jon Snow's biggest failures. It's a failure for a lot of men to learn from. But all the men I know don't like modern-day Star Wars because Mary Sue's and Luke Skywalker wouldn't do that. He'd take his blade and strike everyone down. Mecha Luke. All the people that think the Barbie movie is anti-men. They also misread that moment. How you take this stuff in is how you view the world, and it's important to look at the art and what is intended and what is there. You don't have to like it all. Because when you don't understand it, you get to a moment like fucking Ron DeSantis calling Field of Dreams one of his favorite movies, a movie that directly and explicitly states and discusses the dangers of banning books. And here he is, part of a movement to do the same thing, no matter how he or any other person would try to slice it. All of this matters. All of this matters. It's not just about dusty, dry dates, Easter eggs, and videos. That's why I always say I got tired of the schmodown after a while in terms of competing for the Star Wars thing. Because I just looked around and realized this is fun, and it's fun for a lot of folks, but people were taking it serious, which is their right. But knowing trivia answers does not mean you understand what these stories are trying to tell you. And it was less important for me to understand who the 5th X-Wing pilot was in the Battle of Yavin, but it's more importantly to understand what that battle was about and what it meant to me. And what does it make me feel? And how do you understand this world? I couldn't stop crying after the Barbie movie. Could not stop crying. Grace was crying too. We drove home in tears, laughing. I couldn't stop. It moved me in a way I kind of suspected it would because people were telling me that it would. But it did something special because it's art and it has purpose. And if you're out there trying to create, if you're out there doing YouTube content, TikTok content, what are you trying to say? Yes, we can all be silly. Yes, I sometimes put a lot of things out there that's silly. Yes, once again, I'll have a silly conversation about fast food I like. But even that says something about yourself. And to not understand the true meaning, to not have a bigger purpose in your art, and to not look at art. If you're not a creator, but you enjoy all this stuff, what are you pulling out of it? Because what does that say about you? What do you want to do with that? What do these movies make you feel? This company I kind of work for now, everything I pitch is based around what does it make each and every person here feel? Because none of you have answered that. None of you have discussed it. Although, if you don't understand why and it doesn't make you feel anything, then why are we here? This is the world we live in. This informs us. It informs us. It absolutely does. So, from Ron DeSantis to Barbie, that's where we are today. Do your part to try to understand the art in front of you, and do your part to ask those in your lives, whether they're on YouTube channels or at a bar or at your picnic or your family. When they say they don't like something, that's fine. But when they say they don't like something and they say it in a manner that's meant to destroy other people's joy about it, destroy other people's understanding of it, or shows a gross negligence for what the art is actually saying, press them, dig deeper, push them against the wall, figuratively, and say, great, you don't like that movie. Why? Why? Well, the director, the comedy, the pacing. Why? Why? I got nothing else. This is The Blathering, the 501st episode of something on this podcast feed. And I want to thank you all for showing up. And I'll keep showing up for you. Additional support can be given at patreon.com/Ken Napzok. If you want to get a Hope t-shirt, hit the merch level and join up there. I really appreciate those who support me there, or that listen, just spread the word. Don't forget, comedy shows are on the way, Sports Card ASMR. Everything's out there. Enjoy it. That's it. That's a Blathering. Bye.